This is Black History Month, which was first proposed by educators and students at Kent State University in 1969. 7 years later, in 1976, President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month as a national celebration.
4 years ago, Florida became ground zero for the modern battle over Black history. Under Governor DeSantis, the state launched an all-out attack on how race could be taught in public schools. First came the Stop Woke Act, which restricted how and what educators could teach about racism and slavery, and then the state made it easier to ban books. That was followed by a crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then the removal of any Black history lessons deemed too divisive. Florida drew national attention in 2023 for rewriting its African American history curriculum with new standards suggesting that enslaved people benefited from slavery because they learned new skills. And when the curriculum was updated this year, the Florida Board of Education left in the controversial language requiring middle school students learn how slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. News 4 in Jacksonville talked with a Florida teacher this week about the state's requirements on how Black history is taught.
What you're going to find is most of the honors courses for African American history in our state, they're pretty much the same, just with an actual standard skeleton now. So teachers actually have stuff to go over that the state puts out that, I don't really see too much of an issue with, because at the high school level, it's pretty much business as usual. Yes, we have to teach about racism. Yes, we have to teach about economic inequality and systemic oppression. But, there's way more to Black history than just talking about the problems. You got to celebrate all these achievements that they've done throughout our nation's history. You got to celebrate their resilience for making it through that time of enslavement and empowering themselves through things like the civil rights movement. If we can really show students that these things matter more than the hatred and the prejudice that was caused, then I think we really are setting them up to be better global citizens that can compete in an international world.
Erica, there's no doubt that the governor has made a major impact on how Black history is taught in the state. How do you think that's worked out over these last 4 years or so?
Well, first of all, I got to say I'm a little concerned that you had a white teacher talking about this, because I think for Black folks, we feel as if our history is being erased. And when you erase a people's history, you erase them. So I wonder if you would get a different answer if you talk to a Black teacher who's been teaching Black history. And certainly as someone, I teach at the college level, and I talk about a lot of things that are considered diversity connected. I'm very troubled by what happens here. And it's not so much are things different right now. What's happening is that there's this atmosphere of intimidation that academics are facing, where they're not necessarily sure what they can teach and what they can't teach without facing some sort of negative consequence. And that's by design, because the idea is to get people to limit themselves, not provide all these strictures that people can follow to know they're okay, or provide strictures that people can circumvent if they want to teach a certain way and still get it past the state.
Tremel, what do you think of the changes over the last 4 years or under Governor DeSantis?
As just mentioned, while I'm impressed a little bit to see that this teacher is able to go forward with teaching this subject matter of Black history, it's concerning and wanting to see more of, are you able to teach what's currently happening today, the suppression of information? What's happening in the past is actually happening right now. Those who are close to the administration here in Florida, the DeSantis administration, in putting forward these policies, who is pushing back to be able to accurately say, hey, let's tell the truth in terms of history and what's happening now? So in terms of what he said about history repeating itself, that's happening. Also, can you modernize it and show in real time what we're seeing into having this discussion right now, that information is being suppressed?
Michelle, I was surprised when the state renewed its curriculum standards this year. It said that enslaved people developed skills under slavery, kept that language in.
That could benefit them. So let's also keep that in. I'm not surprised. This is a conversation that we've been having. This is, legislation that I've debated against on the House floor. these cadre of bills that has now become, standards have probably been one of the most offensive pieces of legislation that I've been able to encounter. And it also shows what the majority party feels and thinks about African Americans and Black folks and their contribution. And so what I'm happy about is that even despite that this is happening, you have communities that are setting up their own schools, setting up their own Saturday classes to teach accurate telling of history, of Black history, not only the enslavement. And really, I want to say this, the enslavement portion of Black history is really white history. The fact that Black people were able to overcome it, that is Black history. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to really name it, let's talk about that. And so for me, we as a people will always, achieve and strive even beyond all of this.
Bernie, was the governor right in doing what he did in outlining how Black history should be taught in the state of Florida?
Yes, he has been correct on this issue. He's been spot on, actually. And I just want to take a moment to push back against the earlier comment by one of the guests to assail this teacher somehow because of his race, as if he cannot have an opinion and a perspective as an actual teacher. I think there would be a lot of backlash had this been a Black teacher and he was somehow questioned because of his race. So I'm going to stand up to this for this teacher. I don't know everything that he's saying or why he's saying it, but certainly he shouldn't be assailed because of his race. Now, regarding the governor, I mean, look, he's been spot on. We want real education and not indoctrination in our schools. We want to uplift our students and not tear them down on the basis of race, which is what woke ideology has done. It basically says just because of the color of your skin, you're somehow oppressed. And if you're somehow part of the majority race, you're somehow an oppressor. This dichotomy is dangerous. It teaches our students to hate each other and to hate their country. It has no place in curriculum. And we need to get back to basics of just teaching the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between when it comes to the subject of Black history that has been uplifted by people who are acting in good faith in our party. I was just at the White House.
The only thing I'll point out to address what he said about what I said is that I was talking about a Black teacher not being included.
Okay.
I was not talking about that teacher's race. I was concerned that Black people who are teaching Black history were not a part of this discussion, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, Bernie, go ahead.
You assailed this teacher because of his race. Now, going back to Black history, I was just at the White House for the National Black History Month reception hosted by President Trump with some great figures in current American life. And so this notion that somehow Republicans are trying to erase Black history is completely false. It's being pushed by a woke narrative that is not acting in fit.